A vicious cycle of violent spring weather strikes again.
Large tornado right here.
Tonight in storm-battered Tennessee, one person is dead after authorities say a tree fell on a car north of Knoxville. And this warehouse evacuated after its roof caved in. In southern Michigan, fierce winds overnight ripping a massive chunk out of this FedEx facility, revealing multiple stories of fallen metal and wires. FedEx writing, "We are grateful there were no serious injuries." In all, Tuesday, close to 30 reported tornadoes tore across 8 states, making for more than 60 twisters this week. In Portage, Michigan, neighborhoods are shredded, close to a dozen people hospitalized. This house flipped completely upside down with a couple in their 60s inside.
Your cousin was effectively buried alive
under this house, yeah.
And it was over an hour before they could get her out with just her arm sticking out.
Sisters Kathy and Ann say firefighters dug their cousin out unharmed. Her husband, who was thrown into the yard, suffered a broken neck. The family back today to save photos.
So, is it hitting you right now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's been hitting us all morning.
All morning?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was scary. It was scary what they went through. I cry for them because it's trauma, what they went through. But with all the right support, they're going to be okay.
The same sort of devastation that's played out all week. Among the flashpoints, a deadly EF4 decimating parts of Oklahoma Monday. Meanwhile, Texas now at risk for more damaging winds and hail days after torrential floods ravaged the state. Amid our climate crisis, the behavior of these severe systems is shifting, with supercell storms that spawn twisters becoming stronger and so-called tornado alley trending east toward more populated areas in Mississippi, Tennessee, and the Ohio River Valley. Back in southern Michigan,
it feels like I'm at a funeral.
Dawn Nico's home is among the latest destroyed.
I cried all day yesterday. It's like the end times, all the destruction.
Maggie joining us now from Michigan. And Maggie, that FedEx facility behind you is certainly proof of the power of these storms. Yet we understand there were no serious injuries.
Yeah, Lester, that's right. No serious injuries and no reported deaths. Michigan's governor saying today that in that respect, people feel very lucky, but adding, quote, the devastation is real.
This is the Rebel Call Channel. Welcome to today's show. Multiple tornadoes striking across 6 separate states during the span of 24 hours or even less in the United States of America. We are seeing tornado after tornado after tornado. We're getting used to this, right? We're getting used to hurricane after hurricane after hurricane. Now we're getting used to tornadoes that are just forming in the same exact spots. Kansas, Tennessee, Illinois, Kentucky, South Dakota, Missouri are the latest to be hit. We obviously have seen some of the damage done in places like Michigan and Oklahoma. It is just happening over and over and over again. And this is because it's a targeted attack. The government is using weaponized weather on the civilians, and that is the reason they've been conditioning you to believe in climate change, because ultimately they're going to cease fire on the citizens in this country. When the citizens decide to obey the carbon footprint by staying inside, they'll suddenly say, well, there'll be less tornadoes if you stay inside. There'll be less hurricanes because it's your carbon emissions that are causing all of these massive, catastrophic weather events to occur, right? But what they don't tell you is about how the government has patented the hurricane machines and tornado machines and even earthquake machines, which were created by the likes of people like Tesla, or even this specific one, which I'll get into, the tornado machine, which was patented by Andrew Waxmansky, who might as well be called George Glass because you can't really find any dirt on who this person is, but we could all probably guess that he's a Quasar who probably came up with this idea. So before I get into the story, look what's trending. Well, if you haven't heard about all these tornadoes going on at once, okay, just look up how many tornadoes are going on right now. You just saw the clip. All these tornadoes are going on at the same time as, well, trending on Twitter right now, because conveniently at the same exact time, Twister 2 is coming out. As if anybody really asked for a sequel to the movie Twister. Well, the government's putting out a sequel to the movie Twister. Now, why would they be putting it out? Because movies like this condition people out there into thinking that, well, these things are all just happening at random. People are driving around in their trucks, chasing down tornadoes that are just popping up at random. So it's very convenient timing that Twister 2 which really looks like a D-level film. I mean, it couldn't look more low budget, and the plot couldn't look more formulated as far as, oh, well, it's a woman and it's a man fighting each other off for chasing tornadoes down, and it's science versus rugged Texas guy. I mean, it's ridiculous. You can look at the trailer for yourself. I won't waste your time here in this video, but that happens to be trending, and of course it's trending, because this is the type of thing that they do. They put stuff like this out there because ultimately, yes, the movie might be filled with ridiculous woke themes, but when people see films like this, they actually continue to get conditioned into believing that weather happens at random. You can't predict Mother Nature. And these are things that the government wants to brand into your brain, literally. And the reason they do that is because they don't want you to figure out that the government has the ability to create these types of catastrophic weather events using things that they've patented themselves. So let's take a look at the patent, right? Because it's normal, right? The government would have a patent application for creating a tornado because they just wanted to do it for fun, right? And what's also important to note is that sound waves are generated at a frequency that can influence the formation of a weather system in such a way to change, amplify, or direct it. That's what's worded in this patent. So, well, how could they make sound waves and frequencies like that? Well, I don't know. Look at all those towers that popped up around. You don't think those towers have the ability to create frequencies and sound waves that could potentially form it? I mean, we're literally probably put HARP up all around this country, which I'll get into in another video in regards to the 5G towers being about more than just radiation exposure, being able to use those towers to create weather modification. But let's take a look at the patent here by, again, a guy who is likely a Khazarian. Excuse me, am I allowed to say that word? It's a hurricane and tornado controlled device. Publication number 20030085296. A method is disclosed for affecting the formation and or direction of a low atmospheric weather system. Audio generators are positioned to protect sound waves towards a peripheral area of a weather system. The sound waves are generated at a frequency to affect the formation of the weather system in a manner to disrupt, enhance, or direct the formation. The sound waves can also be projected in a manner to cause the system to produce rain, right? Filed in 2001. Now, if you want to go back, you can go back in the Wayback Machine and you could look at Operation Popeye in the Vietnam War, which I've mentioned many, many times, which is documented, which you can even find on, History Channel shows that they openly air where they talk about being able to create monsoons, etc. So we know they have the ability to do it. I talked about Dubai. They've openly admitted to cloud seeding, have the ability to make rain, and they don't expect you to say, well, then why would we ever have droughts if you have the ability to make rain? Why would we ever have to worry about crops, drying? Why would we have to worry about hunger? How would we ever have to worry about such a thing? Well, they don't want you to think like that because then they wouldn't be able to do what they're doing now, right? So they have this patent, and the question is, how does anybody out there actually not think that a government that is behaving the way that they're behaving on both sides of the aisle, right? On both sides. This is why you have to come out of the left-right hive mind, right? Because again, Democrats look at the craziness of Donald Trump and they say, oh, I can see Trump enslaving us and doing all this stuff. Fine, agreed. And then the Republicans say the same thing about Biden and these psychopaths in power. Agreed, right? So does it just matter? I mean, do you realize how communism works where you put the party above actual common sense? Because that's what everybody seems to be doing. MAGA does it. Democrats do it. So how about we come out of that for a second? We realize, okay, the government has this patent. They have the ability to do this, right? And then you say, well, could you see them doing it? Well, what? Is it going to take a Democrat only seeing Donald Trump in power to realize this stuff? Or can they just finally just say, hey, you know what? They have the ability to do it. That's a problem. Who gave the authority to this guy? Can we find this guy, Waxamansky, okay, immediately and arrest him? Can we find him? I mean, we're going to have to look, by the tombstone of John Doe, apparently, because we're probably never going to find him, right? And then, of course, we have Christians out there who do not want to believe that weather modification is real, right? They don't want to believe about, even Bible verses that tell us, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 2, right? Specifically, where in the time past ye walked according to the course of this world, according to the prince of the power of the air, the spirit that now worketh in the children of disobedience, right? We can even look at Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 9. Even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders, right? So think about biblically when we hear about a lot of the droughts and things like that, who's to say that Satan isn't doing this? They have the ability to, right? We know Satan is the ultimate deceiver. We know that Satan inverts everything. We know that Satan tries to duplicate what God is able to do and what God has done. Now, God is ultimately in control. There's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that. But for people out there to say, well, they don't have the ability to do this is ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous because they do have the ability to do it. They've proven they have the ability to do it. Now, does that mean that God can't intervene here and mess up their plans? Of course, it doesn't mean that. I'm sure many times with some of the stuff they've tried to create that God's intervened. There's been lots of hurricanes that were supposed category 5s, category 6, F5 tornadoes, etc., that we were told about that were coming that ended up being nothing. So maybe that was God interfering with their plans, but they have the ability to do it. They've patented these ideas, and they haven't patented these ideas because they're just, want to make sure that nobody else patents it and that they can make money off of. I mean, what do people think? Why would some human being, if your next door neighbor told you that he came up with a patent to create a tsunami, what would your reaction be, right? Old Joe next door, you knocked on the door. He's like, hey, what's going on? You want to have a beer and talk in the garage? Oh, sure. What's going on, Joe? Well, I just came up with I've been working on this patent. I'm going to create a tsunami and I'm going to have the ability to control lightning so I could strike people with lightning. Would you maybe be a little concerned? You'd probably laugh at first and say that's not physically possible. But then what if Joe showed you that he could do this? What if Joe was like, look, let me show you in a little simulation here that I could do that, right? He showed you on his, so he had a little, he had a little thing like in Back to the Future, a little set design in his garage, and he's showing you, well, look, I could use this, the frequencies here and the radio waves, and I could draw lightning out of the sky to hit a person. And I can get away with it, right? Would you say, well, maybe I'm going to call the police? Okay, I don't know. You can call the cops and say, hey, FBI. I don't know if he really, is going to do it or can, but he's showing me that he has this idea here and he would be able to get away with murder. You'd say, well, we probably would want to report him because that's pretty psychotic, right? So when the government tells us they have the ability to do this stuff and we haven't seen anything done for good, we haven't heard one story about, hey, did you know there was a drought in, so-and-so and parts unknown, and we were going to lose all of our crops. And this was crops that was going to feed third world countries, et cetera. So the government swooped in and they made it rain and they made all these crops flourish. And then we never had to worry about hunger again. You ever hear stories like that, right? But you hear stories and you could just look for yourself. If you look up the basic patents on these things, you say to yourself, oh, wow, they do have patents on it. So what do you think they're using it for? I mean, I ask again, whatever your political affiliation is, does it look like these people have our best interest in mind? And it's genius in a sense of, not genius to be like applauding, but I mean, it makes the most sense. If the government was going to come after the civilians, they could create the ultimate boogeyman. And then think about what comes of that, creating this boogeyman called the climate agenda, climate change, right? They create the boogeyman. And ultimately, out of all of this stuff, they want chaos, destruction, and new order. And they're going to get that. Right? Because you're going to believe that this is just happening at random because we're all breathing and there's factories with pipes that smoke come out of. And then suddenly they're going to tell us that we can't go out on the weekend and that we need to turn off our air condition on X amount of days and we need to not be able to use we can't have wood burning stoves anymore. Nobody starts going, wait a minute. So we can't have anything that people have had, you look at it, you could say, well, I get it from the standpoint of maybe we should shut some of these factories down because they're the ones who have these big pipes, but I don't really do much of my own. But they'll say, well, your carbon footprint's even bigger because you eat meat. And then is some light bulb going to go off where you say, wait, they don't want me to eat meat. They don't want me to have air condition or heat. They don't want me to have a wood burning stove so I could put the fire on when I'm cold. They don't want me to leave my house. It kind of sounds like I'm a prisoner. Cha-ching! Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like, because that's exactly what it is. So the government created the ultimate boogeyman. They have the technology to do this all around the world, all over the place, wherever they want, right? They could make these things, and no one's going to say a question. Have you heard anybody ask anything about the mysterious tornadoes going on right now, other than people who are awake? Everyone out there's just like, oh my gosh, there's just a lot of tornadoes. And they just go about their day going, well, thankfully it's not me until it is them. Right? But if everybody realized that, okay, they could make these things, who has control over this, right? We see, they have HARP, they have all these things that they show us that they have the ability to manipulate and control weather with, right? So who's the person who has the ability to press the button? Well, nobody knows, right? So should we allow somebody out there to have this type of ability, right? Everybody's concerned about so-and-so getting a weapon from a pawn shop and going to a school, etc. But nobody seems concerned about something that could literally destroy lives permanently, forever. Yeah, and so could that. But I mean, literally, they could do this stuff and get away with it. And they have it patented and nobody says boo, right? So again, if you want to look up the patent for yourself, and then you want to ask yourself, hey, why would somebody actually come up with something like this, right? Why would somebody come up with a method of disclose for affecting the formation and or direction of a low atmospheric weather system? Is that something that you're designing on your own? Have you been sitting at home saying to yourself, I'd like to come up with a method to affect the formation and or direction of low atmospheric weather systems? But people out there don't think so. They just go, oh, I don't know what that means. It sounds scientific. Oh, does it? I mean, you can even see the drawing on the guy's patent. I mean, it looks pretty basic enough, right? It looks like a kindergartner made the actual drawing, and you can see, look, they're forming a tornado. And I wonder, the only thing missing in the drawing are those big towers, right? That just conveniently went up in 2020 while we were all locked down. They went up all over the place. Now you can see one every mile or so on your highway, right? You might drive around farmland and just see one sitting in the middle of a field, and you might say to yourself, how did AT&T get one of those towers in the middle of a field? The farmer let them put it there? Who gave them the authority over public roads on the highway system? Does that mean the government's working with Verizon and AT&T? Of course that's what it means. And you're seeing them at work now. These tornadoes are obviously man-made tornadoes. They are popping up at random all over the place. They're literally sitting in the same region in the Midwest. Now we're seeing it closer towards the east. We're seeing it in Tennessee, etc. They're sitting there. The Carolinas, they are making these things and they are wiping people out and they are hurting them out of certain areas. It's like the same as if you were to say, I covered this a couple of weeks ago with FEMA buying up people's homes and nobody's suspicious, right? You can go find the video here on the channel. FEMA's openly buying people's homes from flood damage with our tax money. And people are like, that's a great idea. Is it? Is this what some people, you can't afford your own home, but your tax money's buying out other people's homes so the government could have that specific region of land and herd you out of there like cattle into cities, because that's ultimately what they're doing. Unbelievable, folks. Pray for the people out there who are affected. This is the type of thing. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing to think you could just wake up tomorrow, your life could be going well, and the government could just send a tornado to your home. And then at the same time, they could put the movie Twisters trending on YouTube because, everybody out there asked for a sequel to Twister. Nobody knows one person who asked for a sequel to Twister, but they gave you one, right? Because that's how the government works. This is how mind control works. Here's a little programming to tell you, hey, if you're hearing anything about weather modification, just look, Twister's trending. Oh, right. They're natural. They naturally occur. And look, people chase them down. That's how and then they just go off and get distracted and think that these are things that Mother Nature makes. Yeah. These are things your government is making, and they're using it as a weapon against the civilians. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you as always, and your families.